And so a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting on that very porch. I think it was probably one of those pretty days in early spring. I have absolutely no idea why I was there, but as I'm sitting on the front porch, the youngest of our 5 grandchildren came walking out, and she looked at me, and she took a long look at this little angel sitting next to me, and this is what she said. "So, did her mommy die?" And I'm around preschoolers a lot, and I really have always yearned to get in their head. And I'm sensing maybe a small opportunity, a small window of opportunity, so I decide to play along for a moment just to see where it might take us. And I looked at her and I nodded and I said, "Yes." And she nodded and said, "Yeah." "And did her daddy die?" "Mm-hmm." "And did her sister die?" "Yeah." "And did her brothers die?" Because she has 2. I'm thinking now we're plural. "And did her brothers die?" "Yeah." "And how did you know?" And then she looked at me like, "You call yourself a pastor?" And she sat down on the stoop next to this little angel, and she put her chin in her hands, and she's like nodding to the angel. And I was really struck because I thought maybe I was witnessing empathy here. And maybe I misread it, but it sure looked and felt like there was empathy here, which shocked me. Because her name is Kaylor, and I promise you, no one in my family would disagree with this when I tell you that Kaylor is the toughest, meanest, strongest, most defiant kid in our entire family. Isn't that true? You're her mom. It's absolutely true. Out of all 4 kids and 5 grandkids, hands down, already everybody knows it. But here's the interesting thing. When you're reading through the Bible, and almost anybody who takes Bible studies, they pick up a few little Greek words now and then, especially the ones that are easy to remember, that sound sort of like the English version. And so a lot of folks know that the Greek word for angel is pronounced angelos, and it literally means messenger. And so even though angels are sometimes portrayed as supernatural beings that have wings and a halo, what the church has learned over the centuries, and I'm guessing probably every single one of you have picked this insight up as well along the way, because there are a lot of times in life when there are things that we need to know. And maybe it is something that we haven't faced yet. Maybe it is something that we need to see. Maybe it's something that we need to do and we've been hesitant or reluctant. It's not always a supernatural being with wings and a halo. Oftentimes, in fact, the messenger that God sends to us is another person. And when you read verses like in Hebrews chapter 13, it's easy to connect those sort of dots because it's a short verse, but you'll probably, many of you recognize it when I read this. "Forget not to show love unto strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware." It's a beautiful verse. I absolutely believe the truth of that with all of my heart. And on that day, it was Kaylor. Kaylor, you're back in the service. I'm talking about you. I told her I'd do this. I always tell the members of my family if they end up in a sermon, fair warning. So it's her turn. So on that day, it was Kaylor who helped me to see something that's important. And it's a little, not necessarily disturbing, but it makes you to realize the power of death. And how quickly the harshness and the reality gets picked up by even the youngest of our children. And I've had other parents tell me as well, as young as 5, 4, and even 3, already sensing the reality of that and trying to make sense of it and wrap their heads around it and asking questions about it. And for me, that day, it was Kaylor who reminded me that it doesn't really matter how young you are. It doesn't really matter even, and this is sad also, how old we are when it comes to the fact that throughout our life we will be wrestling with the questions and sometimes the fears that surround this truth, that surrounds death. It's one of the reasons why Easter is so profoundly important for the world and for us.